guys, I'm Dr. Kori Probst, Wellness Director and Vice President at the Diet Doc, here with Dr. Joe Klinzeski. Welcome to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. I'm feeling a little musical today. Sorry, Joe.
You always do that. There's always going to be some little sing-song-ish intro there somewhere.
I don't know. It just makes me happy. Music makes me happy. But today we're into science or fiction. And, you know, before we got the cameras rolling, we were discussing this recent interview you listened to on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry,
well,
go ahead.
No, it's it really piggybacked well off of what we talked about a couple episodes ago when you really picked apart the whole willpower debate and where it comes from and how we can develop that. Mm-hmm. And also, you and I were just together in Nashville, and not only did we have a Diet Doc new program owner training weekend, but you and I sat down to record a feature for an upcoming series that we're doing for the Life Mastery Podcast, and that had to do with the same topic. So it just kind of seems like the universe is speaking to us here about this topic, and we need to dig in deeper.
I think that is an excellent idea. I love this topic.
So one of the questions that I have for you, because you talk a lot about this topic, and I know it has impacted a lot of other coaches and clients, to really understand that willpower is a fatigable resource, that the more decisions you have to make every day, the more pressure you feel to make decisions every day, the more times you have to exert your own self-discipline, it erodes your capacity to do that. It just kind of wears you down. But I heard Dr. Weil. Do you remember Dr. Andrew Weil?
I do, yes.
So, you know, I mean, he's still around. 20 years ago, he had this great big white bushy beard, and he's the complementary and integrative medicine guy that just dominates that category. And it was fun to see him on Rogan still doing, you know, great work. And he talked about what he said was completely dogmatic clinical research, that willpower is something that cannot just be fatigued or replenished. It can be built. And he described it like this. He said, you know, whether you're trying to lose weight, quit smoking, make a big change in your life, he said, always set a date. I'm going to do it Monday, or I'm going to do it January 1st. I'm going to do this day. And he said, even if you don't succeed that time, set another date, set another goal. He said, every time you do that, in your brain, you're creating traction and forward momentum. And it's not like there's this precipice or this ledge that if you don't make it, you're never going to reach that goal. Even when you think you're failing, you're getting closer, closer, closer. And he said, even in addiction medicine and areas like that, he said, when you keep trying, one day you finally hit that trigger, that threshold limit, and all of a sudden it's easy. You know, you do it, and then you realize, why did it take so long? Why did this seem so difficult? And it's really just underlying that process. And it's really a unique way, I think, of looking at that for most people.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about how oftentimes we relate willpower to a muscle. It's something that we build upon and that we can strengthen. But we have this tendency to think that when we reach that precipice, as you call it, it can feel like this aha moment, this super enlightened, like, oh my God, where did this insight come from? It came out of nowhere. But it is exactly for the reasons that you've already mentioned that we get to that place. It's the actions taken. I like to call it take action, take stock, take action, take stock, take action, take stock. And it's just this perpetual, very consistent cycle that we move through in order to develop new understandings, you know, new meaning around what it is that we're learning. And even mistakes and setbacks are the best places to begin building that willpower muscle and that self-control muscle, because we are in that space, we're forced to kind of feel around in the dark. we have to make a tough decision, and we have to make a choice that's forcing us into a new space, a newer understanding. It's like the overreaching principle with training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what it reminds me of, I heard a lecture on this recently as well, and talking about this socioeconomic status of people as an indicator of their ability to be upwardly mobile. So here's the interesting research. You could say, and I think people would agree that this sounds logical, that if somebody is really poor, their SES is very low, they have a disadvantage in their ability to climb, that the socioeconomic scale is hindered. And they said that's actually not what we find in research. It's not the level of poverty, it's the perception of poverty. If you think you're this far under everybody else, then you're just gonna wallow down there, and the likelihood of you succeeding upwardly is very diminished. But if you never really see that comparative data and you don't consider yourself that way, you consider yourself more equal, maybe equal in opportunity, maybe equal in skill, maybe drive, and you're just going to make it. It doesn't matter where you start. It's all about perception. So when it comes to willpower and what Dr. Weil was saying, it really clicked with me that every time we quote fail at something, a lot of people feel like, wow, I am a failure. I cannot get through this. And he said, no, those are steps. Those are important steps forward, and reset that goal, reset that target, lock back in on it, because you're building to the point where, like I said, you're going to cross that line and it's going to be like, wow, this was quite simple.
Yeah, Joe, I think this really relates to the growth versus fixed mindset that we've talked about before too. Those individuals who fail and then have and believe the thought, I'm a failure, they subscribe to the fixed mindset philosophy, which is, I came out of the womb with these particular resources or abilities or talents or skills or whatever, and that's what I have. That's what I've been given. And on the other hand, someone with a growth mindset says, okay, I came out of the womb with these things, and now life is about developing them, building them, increasing and enhancing those things. So it's much less about proving. That's what someone with a fixed mindset gets into, proving I have this, I only have this. And with the growth mindset, it's about improving. So perception is everything too. And that really does come from the thoughts that we believe, the thoughts that our mind generates, that we choose to let our attention land on and believe.
Yeah, it makes me think in my own life. I mean, one way to apply this, I have enough things going on and enough responsibilities and just enough goals, enough ambitions to do certain things that I'm constantly reprioritizing and shuffling. And sometimes that feels like, wow, gosh, I really wanted to get that done and now I can't. I got to put it to the side. But if I start looking at those as, hey, that was a good step forward, now let's put that over here and do this next and so forth. It is perception. It's an upward build instead of I'm leaving things behind and not succeeding.
Right. And I think too, when it comes down, because I'll give an example. This occurred at our new owner training. I can't remember exactly what the conversation was about, but we were giving advice to a new owner or just challenging him in some way. And he kept repeating, how. And in my mind, I was like, it's not about how. It's about why. Why are you doing this in the first place? The how is going to come along if we can get back to the why and to the what. What is so important? Someone who gets bogged down like with their to-do list isn't focused on the why. It's just it's on my list, so I have to check it off and get it done. But it may not even necessarily be super important to the ultimate why. how are we going to help like build and increase and enhance our willpower? It's getting back to the why. Because what's that quote, Joe? If you have a big enough why, you can bear almost any how.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned our new owner training in Nashville again, because that's a place. I mean, talk about a phenomenal incubator for things like this, for challenging each other, coming together as a group of professionals and trying to learn from each other. And that's why I'm constantly telling people something that you and I discussed just the other day. I had this conversation with my daughter last night. Talk about an overachiever. She's in high school, 4.0. Always, watching those grades, wants to succeed. Excuse me. And I said, the reason you're going to be okay with this final, she was worried about a final, is because your ability to learn and to think critically has already been built so well, because you keep putting great new information in your brain. You're constantly looking for new things. And I said, just like a tree, think of the surface area. If you just have one kind of tree trunk versus all these big branches that then give rise to small branch and all the leaves, think of all that surface area. Those are like neurons in your brain, a picture of the neurons in your brain. And you're already so engaged in this process, you're developing all of that. And so it's much, much easier to even pack in new information. So I think that's just a great analogy to what you're saying about challenging one of our new owners.
Yeah, it's a super example. And I just hear over and over when I listen to a lot of entrepreneurship and business related podcasts, Joe, and the individuals who really see a high level of success started on the bottom rung. And they'll say it was work. It was effort. It was this relentless pursuit of understanding myself and growing. And there were so many times where I fell flat on my face and I made significant mistakes, but I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't made those. So that willpower, that literally the will, comes from like failing.
Yep. And I would, and I would even, summarize what we talked about today as at least my new little kernel of enlightenment is, all of the cliches and axioms that talk about, failing, and that's a good thing. Just to understand that neurologically, as Dr. Weil said, you're actually building up toward a point of easier success, that it's not just a cute little phrase that's going to positively motivate me, but it's really happening. Some growth is actually occurring in my brain that's going to make this easier. So for all those people that you said start on the bottom rung and they're floundering and they're making mistakes and they're pushing forward into areas that may not instantly give them success, it's going to pay off. And so guys, we'll leave it there, and we'll be back in our next episode dealing with nutrition and psychology, all the things that we need for ultimate success, not only for our physical health, but for our lives, in the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, guys.